This is Brian Dick's Rugby Roundup. Coming up, Moseley and Bees crash again, Stourbridge leave themselves with work to do, and we speak to the men in the know. Hello and welcome to Brian Dick's Rugby Roundup. I'm joined by the voice of Midlands Rugby, Brian Dick. Hi Brian.
Hi Chrissy.
Well, first let's start with Moseley's game against Coventry. Was the game as dire as the scoreline suggested, Brian?
In a short answer, yeah, it was pretty much. Coventry 6, Moseley 3. It pretty much did what it said on the tin. There were no tries. And for long periods, it was like watching two old arthritic blokes fighting over a bun in a nursing home. Two really, really desperate teams, low on confidence, and it absolutely showed. I mean, they did come. You know, there were flashes of where one side might have scored a try, but it was just so tense. It was like watching car crash rugby at times.
Well, Moseley have left themselves with a mountain to climb now. What do they need to do, and can they do it? Well, yes, they can do it. They've got to win, definitely too. They've got to beat Coventry and Bees at home in the last two games. If they could win at Rotherham, which is going to be extremely difficult. If they could win at Rotherham, they would give themselves an outstanding opportunity of staying in the division. Without beating Rotherham, it becomes much, much more difficult. And when you're playing bonus point rugby, you have to play a different kind of game. You can't just play it tight and hope to win by a try. You've got to score 4 tries, and you've got to win by more than 7 points. And for a side that isn't playing with much confidence, and with the weather the way it is, that could be pretty tricky. So did either side even come close to scoring a try?
Yeah, Moseley did in the first half. They had a great chance when Andy Borgen put Ryan Wilson through a gap. The problem was that they were launching single runners at Coventry, and there was no support for Wilson, and the move died out. Nathan Bressington got round his man a couple of times as well in the second half, but he's been so rarely utilised of late that it probably came as something of a surprise to him, and he didn't finish them off. In the second half, Moseley didn't even get close. Coventry did. They had a bit of pressure on the Moseley line, but for an extremely poor cross kick from Mike Walls, they possibly would have scored against Moseley.
Well, we caught up with Moseley captain Gareth Taylor after the match. Here's what he had to say.
We've got 4 points. We know Coventry now got 5. We're now at the bottom of that group of 4. We've got 2 home games left in the last 2 of the season. We know we've got to do something in 2 weeks' time against Rotherham. We know that. We know our problem at the moment is keeping hold of that ball. We know that at least we're playing rugby. At least we're going in the right direction. There are massive positives to come out of today. It's just we can't. Waggy, the coaches can't keep telling you that every single week and doing nothing about it. That's a really disappointing fact. We've got to learn from these things and move forward. That's all we can do. The confidence is going to take a knock, obviously, but I think the boys are, in terms of playing rugby, are positive.
Well, now let's move on to Bees, and after a flying start, they lost to Rotherham. Brian, what was that game like?
Well, I think the decisive thing that happened in this match was Bees had 2 yellow cards virtually at the same time. They were left on their own line with 13 men, and Rotherham scored 19 of their 33 points at that stage. Bearing in mind Bees only got 20, that's pretty much job done. Russell Earnshaw will tell us shortly, that he felt that was the crucial juncture, and he's absolutely right. I think if we're all honest, I don't think anyone really expected Bees to win at Rotherham. So when they were budgeting how their playoff campaign would go, they really wouldn't have accounted for 4 points at Rotherham, so it doesn't really set them back massively.
Well, we had a chance to speak to Russell Earnshaw after the game. Here's what he had to say.
Obviously, when we go to Coventry or Moseley, or they come to us, then there's pretty fierce rivalry. I mean, obviously you want to win every game, but there is that little bit of edge in a derby, and having seen the highlights of the Coventry Moseley game last week, it looked pretty brutal, and obviously the casualty list will testify to that. I just think, I think Rotherham have, had 3 good games. They played well. They had, a poor first half against Moseley, and Moseley conversely had a pretty good first half. But they're a good side. They played 2 home games, which is obviously a slight advantage as well. We've obviously got 2 home games left to go. And as of Moseley, so it's, I suppose it's a lot to play for in the 3 sides at the bottom. I'd say everyone's pretty even Stevens.
Well, despite the loss, they'll still be buoyant going into the match with Rotherham.
They will. They'll be back at home. No one likes going and playing at Sharman's Crossroad. They've got the old tricks there. They like to remove all the toilet paper from the visitors' dressing room, spray water on the floor, nail people's bags to the benches, leave things floating in the toilets. Rotherham will get all of that treatment. And Bees have got a great chance of beating them for the first time, what will be the first time in 4 meetings this season. And if Bees can do that, you know, they'll be flying, and you know they've every reason to be confident because they've worked hard and you know they've rebuilt really well in the middle of the season. So you know, good luck to them.
A full squad, all fit and well.
Yeah, I think so. Matt Long should be back in for selection this weekend. Will Lawson will be back at centre. That'll help them play a sort of a wider game if that's what they're going to try and do. What they will need to do though is they'll need Ben Paxton, their fly half, to have a better game than he did at Rotherham. He's a real up and down player. When he's good, he's very, very good, and when he's bad, he's not. So if he plays well, and as I say, with the 2 boys back in the squad, then you know Bees have got nothing to fear.
Well, it's another big weekend for Stourbridge. They'll be looking to bounce back after their defeat at Artley. What happened there, Brian?
Well, they lost by 8 points, so they didn't get their losing bonus. They got a try bonus, which will be helpful in the final analysis. Neil Mitchell, their director of rugby, described it as the most painful defeat he's ever been involved in, and Mitch does like to hand these things up at this stage of the year, but I think that's a sign of the tension there is down there. They are let me think 9 points clear of the relegation zone. That should be enough, but they just still need this one win, and the longer they go without it, you know, the more nervous everyone becomes.
Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.